millionaire accepts a bet to marry an obese woman who challenges his standards. What starts as a game of power and control soon takes an unexpected turn. Noah Coleman, a successful businessman with an impressive fortune, was known for both his arrogance and charm. That night, at a luxurious party filled with the elite, his friend Eric approached him with a mischievous smile. Eric was the type of friend who loved to provoke. He knew Noah's massive ego well and knew exactly where to poke to spark his interest. Amid laughter and teasing, Eric made an unexpected proposal. "Noah, I've heard you're the kind of man who doesn't turn down a good challenge," Eric began, disguising the provocation in a casual tone. Noah raised an eyebrow, looking at him with curiosity and slight disdain. He enjoyed challenges, especially those involving power and money. To him, life was about proving his superiority. "There's nothing I can't do. Tell me, what's the game this time?" "I hope it's something worth my time," Noah replied with a confident smile and a mocking tone. Eric smiled, pleased to have piqued his friend's interest. The bet he was about to propose was indeed unusual and risky. "How about proving you can marry someone outside your standards? Not a model, not one of those socialites who parade around. I'm talking about a woman who's the complete opposite of your taste, someone you would never choose. And all you need to do is stay married for just 3 months." Noah laughed with disdain. "And what do I get out of this?" Eric smiled, savoring the moment. $500,000 and the glory of knowing that even in marriage, you can win any bet. After 3 months, just file for divorce and go on with your life as you please. Noah hesitated, but not for long. The idea was absurd, but the offered amount and the challenge of proving his superiority were irresistible. He saw it as a simple power game, another way to show everyone he controlled the world around him. Noah looked at Eric's extended hand, feeling the weight of the proposal. It was just a game, he thought. No feelings, no real responsibility. He just needed to prove he could do it. He shook Eric's hand, sealing the deal. After sealing the deal, Eric already had someone specific in mind and made sure to introduce her to Noah. Her name was Stella Carter. Unlike the models and socialites Noah was used to dating, Stella was an average-looking woman with generous curves, something completely outside his usual standards. She wasn't dazzling or sophisticated in the millionaire's eyes, but she had a strong presence and a reputation for being an independent and strong woman. This only piqued Noah's curiosity even more. He was used to controlling everything and everyone around him, and the idea of dealing with someone who wouldn't be easily influenced was, at the very least, intriguing. So Noah decided to set up a meeting at one of the city's most luxurious restaurants. After all, he knew how to impress people with his status and possessions, and despite the challenge, he believed Stella wouldn't be different from the others. That night, Noah arrived at the restaurant with his usual air of superiority. He waited patiently while surveying the environment, confident that by the end of the dinner, he would have Stella under his control, ready to accept the terms. Shortly after, she entered the restaurant. Stella wore a simple outfit but seemed completely at ease. Contrary to what Noah had imagined, she didn't appear dazzled by the sophisticated surroundings. In fact, she maintained an expression of indifference that slightly unsettled him. They sat down and exchanged initial pleasantries, but before he could steer the conversation as he wished, Stella was direct, cutting off any attempts at charm or small talk. "I know why we're here, Noah. I know about the time frame and the amount you'll win if you manage to marry me," she said with a slight smile that showed confidence. "And before you start convincing me, you need to know that I have my own conditions and reasons for accepting this marriage." Noah was surprised but tried to hide it. Though he wasn't used to losing control of situations, this was new for him. No woman he had been with before had confronted him so openly. "Interesting," he said, trying to keep the tone casual. "And what kind of conditions would those be?" Stella observed him for a moment before responding, as if she wanted to measure her words. "If I agree, Noah, you're going to have to respect my space, and don't treat me like one of the women you're used to. I'm not a trophy or a prize, and I'm not here to please you. This marriage is just a front for me, and in 3 months, we'll be divorced as planned. While we're married, I expect to live my life freely, and you won't interfere with my choices." Noah listened intently, intrigued. He had anticipated some resistance, but not for Stella to take charge of the situation so confidently. Still, her boldness only made the challenge more captivating. "I see," Noah replied, trying to suppress the smile that threatened to form. "And what if I agree to those terms?" "Then we have a deal," Stella responded, her voice steady and serious. "But understand this, I'm not swayed by money or status. If you ever think you can control me, this ends right then and there." Noah nodded, his interest piqued. This woman was unlike any he had ever met. Not only did she set her own boundaries, but she seemed completely impervious to his usual charm. The challenge had just become even more thrilling. They shook hands, sealing the agreement. As Noah left the restaurant, he felt a mix of exhilaration and curiosity. He had taken the bet to prove he could win over any woman, but it was clear that with Stella, the rules would be very different. The first round of the game had begun, and little did he know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would transform his life. A week later, the wedding took place. It was a quiet affair, lacking the glamour and media frenzy Noah was accustomed to. He was used to grand celebrations and extravagant displays, but Stella had insisted on something simple, low-key. Noah hesitated, but ultimately conceded. After all, he'd agreed to her terms, and in his mind, 3 months would pass quickly, a guaranteed win. After the ceremony, Noah brought Stella to his mansion, an opulent estate with sprawling gardens and panoramic views of the city. He was accustomed to watching people's eyes widen in awe as they stepped inside for the first time, but Stella was different. She entered without so much as a flicker of surprise. Her gaze swept across the grand space, not with admiration, but with an air of indifference that unsettled him. With a confident smile, Noah led her through the grand hall, expecting her to be impressed, but Stella remained unmoved, as if the wealth and grandeur meant nothing to her. When they'd finally stopped, she turned to him, her eyes unwavering. 3 months, Noah, she said, her tone firm. That's the timeline, not a day longer. Noah paused, taken aback by her resoluteness. Her voice left no room for negotiation. She was there on her own terms and had no intention of bending to whatever temptations he might offer. But instead of feeling discouraged, Noah smiled. He was confident that, in time, she would relent. He had encountered this kind of resistance before. For Noah, seduction was an art he had perfected over the years. Women had fallen for him, his mansion, the luxury, the lavish gifts. It was only a matter of time before Stella would see the rewards of being with him, as long as she allowed herself to be drawn in. "Don't worry, Stella," he said, a teasing smile playing on his lips. "I'm sure you'll change your mind before the 3 months are up." She merely raised an eyebrow, her gaze unflinching. "I'm not like the women you're used to, Noah," she replied, her voice calm and assured. "If you think you can buy me with gifts or luxuries, you're very mistaken." Her unshakable calm left him momentarily off balance. That night, Noah put his first plan into motion. He arranged an exquisite dinner, prepared by a personal chef he had hired just for the occasion. The table was set with fine silverware and candles, and the hall was designed to create the perfect atmosphere. He was confident that this display of wealth would impress Stella, but when she sat at the table, all he received was a polite nod of approval and nothing more. During dinner, Noah talked about his wealth, his companies, his travels, the life he had built for himself. He assumed that hearing about his lifestyle would tempt Stella to join him in it, but her response was always the same. A brief smile, a casual comment, as if none of it truly mattered to her. Finally, Stella broke the silence. "Noah, I'm not here for your fortune or your status," she said, her tone steady. "I accepted this bet because I have my own reasons, and nothing you show me will impress me." Her coldness struck at the heart of his assumptions. Deep down, Noah believed that this resistance was just a front, something that would eventually fade away. To him, Stella was nothing more than a new challenge, and he was confident that, like all the others, she would eventually give in. Let's play a game with those who only read the comments. Type milkshake in the comments. Only those who get this far will understand. Now let's continue with the story asterisk. But that night, as he watched her cross the mansion's hall and retire to her room without even a glance back, Noah felt an unfamiliar unease. For the first time, he wondered if he really had control of the situation. What was supposed to be a simple bet was quickly turning into something far more complex. Stella didn't seem like the type of woman who would simply give in. And for the first time, Noah realized that maybe he was facing a challenge that no amount of wealth could solve. The following days became a real test for Noah. Stella was a constant presence in his mansion, but she appeared completely indifferent to the opulence surrounding her. He tried everything to impress her: expensive gifts, exclusive invitations to events, and lavish dinners, but nothing moved her. Stella lived as if Noah's money meant nothing, and this only frustrated him further. One evening, after a long day of work, Noah found her in the garden, sitting among the flowers. She looked calm, almost serene, lost in her thoughts. He approached, determined to break the invisible barrier she maintained. "You're at home, Stella. You can ask for anything you want," Noah said with a slight smile, trying once again to appeal to the luxuries she seemed to avoid. Stella looked at him for a moment, her gaze sharp, as if seeing through the mask of self-sufficiency he tried to maintain. Then she sighed and spoke. "You don't understand, Noah. Nothing here matters to me. I didn't come to take advantage of your fortune or your status. If that were the case, I wouldn't be here." Noah remained silent, sensing there was something deeper behind her words. No matter how hard he tried, it seemed there was a barrier Stella wouldn't let him cross. Determined to understand what drove her, he pressed further. "Then why did you accept this bet, Stella? You could have just said no and gone on with your peaceful life. What brought you here?" Stella hesitated, and for the first time, Noah saw a fleeting shadow of pain on her face. She looked away, as if deciding how much she should reveal. "I accepted because," she began, but then quickly changed her tone. "Let's just say I have reasons beyond what you can imagine. I came here to face something from my past." Her words piqued Noah's curiosity. Stella's indifference seemed to be rooted in something deeper, something he didn't fully understand. And though he tried to ignore it, that curiosity gnawed at him. "Your past?" he asked, trying to dig deeper. Stella sighed, her eyes drifting toward the horizon as if she wanted to escape the conversation. There was resistance in her expression, but also a silent desire to unburden herself. "Let's just say that someone's money and power changed my life at a crucial moment, and not for the better," she said bitterly. "Since then, I've learned that wealth doesn't mean happiness. In fact, it often brings destruction." Noah absorbed every word in silence. For the first time, he saw a crack in Stella's armor, a glimpse of the pain she carried. But before he could ask more, she stood up, abruptly ending the conversation. "I think I've said more than I should. Good night, Noah." She walked away, leaving him alone in the garden. Noah stood there, pondering her words. Her coldness, her resistance to luxury, and her firm stance now made sense. As he returned inside, Noah felt something strange stirring inside him. This woman, who had initially been just a bet, was starting to awaken feelings in him that he couldn't define. There was a mix of curiosity, something that went far beyond the control he prided himself on having over people. Days passed, and Noah grew more and more frustrated. He had tried everything to impress Stella: gifts, dinners, luxuries, but nothing seemed to move her. To Stella, Noah's wealth and extravagant lifestyle were completely irrelevant. For him, this constant resistance was unbearable. He had always been able to control those around him, but Stella seemed to deflect every one of his attempts. Determined to break her, Noah changed his approach. Instead of trying to win her over with material things, he decided to tighten his control. If Stella wanted distance, he'd keep a close eye on her. The next morning, as she prepared to leave for the flower shop, Noah was waiting in the living room, his expression firm and resolute. "Where do you think you're going?" he asked, his tone leaving no room for casualness. Stella looked at him, surprised, grabbing her purse. "To my job, Noah. I already told you I'm not giving that up." Noah stepped forward, blocking her path. "I'm not allowing you to keep up with this routine, Stella. You're my wife now. I don't need my wife out dealing with the public like—" He paused, searching for the right words. "Like anyone." Stella crossed her arms, her gaze hardening. "I'm not a piece in your game, Noah. That's not what we agreed on. I accepted your terms, but I won't give up who I am." Noah felt his face heat. He was used to getting his way, and her cold defiance infuriated him. He wanted her to bend, to give in to him like all the others, but Stella remained unyielding. And that only fueled his determination to control her. "You're in my house, Stella," he said, his voice low and firm, "and under my conditions. Don't forget that." While you're here, you'll do what I expect of a wife." She raised an eyebrow, defiant. "Your conditions, Noah?" The deal was for 3 months, and none of that included controlling what I do. "I'm not a prisoner here," she said, her voice steady. "You may not understand how things work in my world, Noah, but as long as we're married, you'll follow my rules." He stepped closer, a glint of challenge in his eyes. Stella met his gaze, unfazed. The tension between them crackled, as if they were both engaged in a silent battle for dominance. She took a deep breath, folded her arms, and replied coolly, "I've dealt with enough men who think they can control everything around them. Trust me, Noah, that kind of behavior doesn't intimidate me." His jaw tightened, anger rising. No one dared challenge him like this. No one ever tried to maintain control in his presence. But Stella, calm, composed, and utterly resolute, was dismantling every attempt he made to assert his authority. "Fine," he said at last, his voice edged with frustration. "You want to work? Fine, but don't think it changes anything." Stella turned and walked past him, never once glancing back. Her posture was firm, her resolve unshaken. Noah watched her go, a mix of frustration and fascination swirling within him. He had never met someone like Stella, someone so immune to his power. Later that evening, he watched her return from the flower shop, her stance unchanged. Stella moved through the house like a woman completely at ease with who she was, while Noah felt increasingly unsettled. For the first time, doubts crept into his mind. This power struggle, was it even leading anywhere? Without realizing it, the bet he thought he was controlling was beginning to unravel him in ways he hadn't expected. It wasn't just about winning anymore, it was about something deeper, something far bigger than he could grasp. As days passed in the mansion, Noah and Stella's silent war continued. A constant undercurrent of tension flowed between them, but Noah couldn't break her. He couldn't even rattle her, and that disarmed him in a way he'd never known before. Stella was like a fortress, untouched by luxuries, impervious to his intimidation. But what he didn't know was that beneath her calm exterior lay a depth of pain that ran far deeper than he could imagine. One night, after yet another heated argument, Noah found her alone in the garden, surrounded by shadows and silence. Her expression was different now, softer, wary. It was as if the weight of the world was pressing down on her. Fueled by a mixture of anger and confusion, Noah approached her. "What's your problem?" he demanded, his voice taut. "Why are you even here? If you hate all of this so much, why accept a marriage you don't want?" She stayed quiet for a moment, her gaze fixed on the ground. When she finally lifted her eyes, Noah saw something in them that took him off guard. Anger, yes, but also something deeper, older. A raw, unhailed pain. "You really want to know why I'm here, no?" she said, her voice laced with bitterness, almost cutting. "I took this bet for one simple reason, to get revenge on you. I did this so you could feel a fraction of what my family and I went through. To make you suffer." Her words kicked in like a physical blow. Noah froze, his mind struggling to process what she had just said. "Revenge?" he repeated, his voice shaky. "What are you talking about, Stella?" She stepped closer, her face a mask of pain and anger she could no longer hide. Her eyes burned with a bitterness that cut through him. "Years ago, my family had a small business. My father worked his whole life to keep it afloat. It was our livelihood. Then an investor came along, promising growth, opportunities. An investor who seemed like he wanted to help us." Stella paused, gathering herself before continuing. "That investor was you, Noah. You took everything we built in a matter of months. We lost everything. My family was destroyed. My father died with debts we could never repay." The ground seemed to fall away beneath him. He vaguely remembered that deal, just another acquisition, another business opportunity. But he never saw the wreckage it left in its wake. Stella's voice cut through his thoughts, her words unrelenting. "That's why I accepted the bet," she continued. "It wasn't for money, or fame, or luxury. I did it because I wanted you to feel what you caused. I wanted you to face someone who would never yield, never break, so you'd know what it's like to lose control over something you want." Noah's chest tightened, as if the air had been sucked from the room. Here he was, the man who prided himself on his cold, calculating business mind, now face to face with the real consequences of his decisions. And it was more than he could bear. "Stella, I didn't know. I never imagined that my decisions could destroy someone's life like that. To me, it was just." He trailed off, the words failing him. How could he possibly justify what he'd done? She shook her head, her voice tinged with sadness. "That's the problem, Noah. To you, people like my family and I are just numbers on a page. You never bothered to consider the impact of your actions. Lives were ruined and you didn't even notice." Silence descended between them, thick and suffocating. Noah stood there, devastated. He had never imagined that his ambition could cause such destruction. For the first time, he felt the full weight of his actions, real regret. But even though he wanted to apologize, he knew it wasn't enough. Stella turned away from him, her back to him as she walked off. "You wanted to control my life," she said quietly, her voice colder now than ever. "But I would never bend, no. That will be my revenge, making you taste the bitterness of not getting what you want, of losing control." Her words landed on him like a final sentence. Noah was completely shattered. He wanted to defend himself, to apologize, but he knew nothing he said would ever be enough. All that remained was the crushing weight of guilt and the emptiness of knowing he had lost more than he ever imagined. Stella walked away, leaving the room without a glance back, while he stood there, paralyzed, facing the remnants of his own humanity. No one knew that in that moment, he had lost something he could never recover. Weeks passed, and Stella kept a painful, cold distance. She ignored him whenever possible, responded with only a few words, and treated him with an indifference that left him more and more frustrated and, at the same time, regretful. He had tried everything: gestures of kindness, re-evaluations in his business, and even donations to the community where she grew up. But nothing seemed enough. One night, after another day of failed attempts, Noah could no longer bear the impenetrable walls Stella had built between them. He needed an answer, no matter how painful it might be. He found her in the garden, under the soft moonlight, her eyes fixed on the horizon, as though trying to distance herself from everything and everyone. "Stella," he began, his voice heavy with wariness and sincerity he rarely allowed himself. "What do you want me to do? Please, please tell me. I'll do anything, anything to have you forgive me, to stop treating me like a ghost." She remained silent, her gaze lost in the stars. Noah thought she might ignore him again, but finally she sighed, her shoulders bearing the weight of something she had been holding inside for so long. "There's nothing you can do, Noah," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper, but heavy with a pain that seemed centuries old. "There's nothing you can do to make up for everything I lost, all the suffering I went through. Nothing can erase that." A knot formed in Noah's throat. Her voice was full of resentment, but there was something else, an overwhelming sadness so deep that it took his breath away. "Stella, please. I need to know," he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "What is it that you're hiding the most?" She looked at him for a long moment, as if debating whether to reveal a part of her past she had kept hidden for years. There was hesitation and pain in her eyes. Finally, she spoke, and each word felt like a confession torn from deep within her. "A few days before my father died," she began, her voice trembling. "I was pregnant." Noah froze. Shock washed over him, the world seeming to come to a standstill as his mind tried to process her words. "Pregnant?" he repeated, barely able to believe what he was hearing. Stella nodded, her gaze distant, as though she was reliving that painful moment. "I was pregnant with my ex-boyfriend's child. When he found out, he left me, disappeared, leaving me alone with no explanation." She paused, fighting back tears, before continuing, her voice weakening. "So I had to take care of my sick father on my own, trying to stay strong as everything fell apart around me." Noah could barely breathe. He had never imagined Stella carried such a painful story, such devastating loss. She had always seemed so strong, so unbreakable, and now here she was, vulnerable, showing him the scars that he had helped reopen. Stella took a deep breath, and Noah saw the tears finally fall down her face. "When my father died, I lost whatever hope I had left. The stress, the despair. I couldn't handle it." She stopped, her voice breaking, but she held his gaze, forcing him to feel every word. "I ended up losing the baby. I lost everything, my father, my family, my child. And it was all because of your decisions, your greed, your ego." Her words were like knives, each one sharper than the last. Noah felt the weight of her revelation settle like a boulder on his chest, the guilt burning within him like never before. He wanted to say something, to do something that could erase her suffering, but he was paralyzed by the pain he had caused. "Stella," he tried to speak, but his voice came out hoarse. I didn't know. I had no idea." "Of course you didn't know," she interrupted, her voice now laced with bitterness. "Because you never cared to know. To you, it was all just numbers, contracts, financial transactions. But to me, it was my life. And I lost everything, Noah. Everything." She looked at him with fierce intensity, and in that moment, no one else knew the true extent of the devastation she had endured. He knew he could never forgive himself for what he had done. He hadn't just destroyed a business, he had taken away any chance of happiness for Stella, any hope for a better future. He was responsible for a pain that would never be undone. "I know what I did is unforgivable," Noah whispered, his voice trembling, as though the weight of his regret might crush him. "And I don't expect you to forgive me, Stella. But please, just tell me what I can do to ease your pain." "I'll do anything." Stella watched him for a long moment, and the depth of the agony in her eyes was immeasurable. The silence between them was so thick it felt suffocating, like Noah was drowning in it. He understood that nothing could undo the past, not his words, not his apologies. Nothing would bring back her child, or erase the scars she carried. Finally, Stella took a shaky breath, turning away to wipe the tears from her eyes. When she spoke again, her voice was heavy, marked by the weariness of someone who had endured more than any person should have to bear. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you, Noah," she said, her words blunt and raw. "What you did, what I lost, it can't be fixed. But I can see that you're trying. And maybe, just maybe, one day I'll find a way to move on. But it won't be easy, it won't be quick." A flicker of hope stirred in Noah's chest, but he knew the road to redemption would be long and treacherous. He nodded silently, acknowledging her pain, accepting the fact that he would carry this weight for the rest of his life. Stella turned and walked away, disappearing into the mansion, leaving Noah standing alone under the vast, indifferent night sky. The gravity of his actions crushed him. He had destroyed a life, hers, and no matter how hard he tried, he could never undo the damage. That night, Noah finally understood the true meaning of loss. He barely slept. Stella's words haunted him, the guilt, the coldness, the quiet strength she carried, all of it settling deep in his soul. His thoughts were consumed by how much she had suffered, all because of him. The next morning, Noah awoke with a new, intense purpose. If he wanted any kind of redemption, he would have to change, truly change, and take real action. He had no time to waste. The first step was clear. He went straight to the office, calling his lawyer and financial advisors. He had made a decision. He would reverse what he could of the predatory acquisitions he had made. His first priority was to undo the harm done to Stella's family's business. The company had new owners now, but Noah was determined to right as many wrongs as possible. Asterisk, asterisk, let's play a game asterisk, asterisk for those of you who only read the comments, type pizza. Only those who make it this far will understand. Now let's continue with the story later. That week, Stella noticed subtle shifts in Noah's behavior. He no longer insisted on controlling her movements and seemed more reserved, more introspective. She observed how he spent hours in his office, and though she didn't ask, she sensed something was different. One evening, while she was in the garden, Noah approached slowly. Stella watched him, surprised by the vulnerability on his face. He took a deep breath, almost as if searching for the courage to speak. "Stella, I know words aren't enough to fix what I did," he said, his voice low. "But I want you to know that I'm trying. I've made some changes in my business. I've asked them to reevaluate what happened with your family's company. I know it won't erase the past, but it's a start." Stella studied him, her eyes narrowed as she assessed his sincerity. Part of her wanted to believe him, but years of pain and resentment made her skeptical. "Do you think that changes anything?" she replied, her voice controlled. "It's not just about the money, Noah. What you took from my family was more than possessions. You took our livelihood, our dreams, our peace." He nodded, the weight of her words pressing down on him. He knew a simple financial gesture wouldn't be enough, but he was determined to keep trying. "I know," he said, "and I'm not asking you to forgive me or to accept everything all at once. I just want you to know that I'm trying. I want to be a better person, even if I can never fully make up for what I did." A long silence passed between them. Stella seemed torn, caught between the hurt of the past and the flicker of hope that, despite everything, was beginning to sprout. She had never expected Noah to truly change, but here he was, standing before her, looking different. Noah began making weekly visits to Stella's old town, seeking to understand the impact of his past decisions. He reached out to the people who had been affected, committing himself to fixing each of the wrongs he had done. It was hard work, and he knew that many would never forgive him. But with every step he took, he felt less empty and closer to a purpose that went beyond money and power. At first, Stella ignored his efforts, but as the weeks went by, she heard stories from the townspeople about his dedication, and to her surprise, she discovered how committed he truly was. Noah's transformation was real, and though she tried to deny it, something inside her shifted. One night, they found themselves together in the library, and Stella finally broke the silence. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice low and hesitant. "You could just ignore me and wait for these 3 months to be over." Noah looked at her, and in that moment, Stella saw something new in his eyes, something deeper, more genuine. "Because, for the first time, I understand that my life never had a real purpose. I always prided myself on being in control, on accumulating money and power. But you made me realize that all of it is empty." He sighed, a long exhale that seemed to carry the weight of his past. "And because somehow, I want you to know that I am capable of change. Not out of pride or ego, but because in some way, your presence has made me want to be a better person." Stella fell silent, absorbing his words. Noah respected the stillness between them, knowing she needed time to process everything. He no longer viewed the end of the 3 months as the final point of their bet, but as a chance to start over, to prove he could turn his past into something that, perhaps one day, Stella could forgive. For Stella, Noah's words were a mix of relief and uncertainty. Despite the weight of all the resentment she carried, she could see something genuine in his actions. As they both stood quietly in the library, Stella began to realize that maybe, just maybe, the man she had once despised was becoming someone she could learn to respect. The next day, Noah found Stella in the garden, where she spent hours tending to the flowers. He approached quietly, keeping a respectful distance, and watched as she delicately cared for the plants, as though they were the only thing she had left. "Stella," he began, his voice soft, almost a whisper. "I know there aren't any words or actions that can undo what happened, but I'm here. And if there's anything I can do to help you move forward, I'll do it." She paused, her gaze still fixed on the flowers. For a moment, Noah thought she wouldn't respond, that she'd keep ignoring him, as she had done before. But then, Stella turned to him, her expression steady, filled with a sadness he would never fully understand. "I don't expect you to understand my pain, Noah," she said quietly. "I don't expect you to completely make things right. But what I want, what I need, is something money can't buy." Noah nodded, feeling helpless but determined to do whatever he could to help. Stella paused for a moment, gathering her thoughts. She took a deep breath, choosing her words with care. "I want you to keep going, to help the people you hurt, not to impress me or ease your guilt, but because it's the right thing to do. I need to see with my own eyes that you truly care and that you've changed." Noah swallowed hard, understanding the weight of her words. He knew this path had no shortcuts. Even if full forgiveness was beyond his reach, he knew he had to keep going, not just for her, but for himself too. "I promise, Stella. I promise I won't stop. I'll keep going, no matter what it takes." She looked at him, silent for a moment, and for the briefest of seconds, Noah thought he saw something shift in her gaze. A flicker of acceptance, perhaps, or a hint of relief. Even if forgiveness wasn't in the cards, she seemed to acknowledge that he was willing to walk this path. Over the weeks that followed, Noah threw himself into his promise. He visited towns where his company had caused harm, met with families who had lost everything, and listened to stories of the lives he'd shattered. He knew not everyone would accept his efforts, but he was determined to restore what he could, no matter how small. Stella watched from a distance, her emotions a blend of skepticism and curiosity. Part of her still couldn't believe that Noah, the arrogant and cold man she once knew, could transform into someone genuinely selfless. But as time passed, something inside her began to soften. One evening, seeing him return from one of his trips, exhausted, yet unwavering, Stella felt a stir of compassion. She knew the past couldn't be erased, but she couldn't deny that he was trying. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, a small space in her heart began to open, a crack where hope and acceptance began to take root. One quiet morning, Noah found her again in the garden. This time, he sat beside her without saying a word. They shared the silence, both absorbing the peacefulness around them. Finally, Stella broke it, her voice soft but thoughtful. "I've been watching what you've been doing, Noah," she said, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "I can see that you're really trying to make things right. I know the weight of guilt isn't easy to carry, but I'm starting to believe that your change is real." Noah felt a wave of relief wash over him, mixed with gratitude. He knew the road ahead was long, but Stella's words confirmed that maybe, just maybe, he was on the right path. "I don't expect you to forgive me, Stella," he said earnestly. "But every step I take, every attempt to make things right, brings me closer to a purpose I never thought possible. If I can rebuild even a fraction of what I destroyed, even if it doesn't erase the past, I'll be doing what needs to be done." She nodded slowly, a faint smile tugging at her lips. For the first time, he noticed a soft glow in her eyes. A sign that the weight of her pain was beginning to lift just a little. "Maybe I'll never be able to forget what happened," she said quietly, "but I'm learning that forgiveness isn't just for the other person, it's for ourselves. Holding on to bitterness traps us, chains us to the past. And in a way, seeing you fight for this redemption has given me some peace." Noah sat quietly, absorbing her words. He knew he could never turn back time, but now he understood that what mattered most was moving forward, building a legacy greater than his pride or ambition. As the days passed, the tension between Noah and Stella began to ease. The silence that once stretched between them started to dissolve, giving way to lighter exchanges and, on occasion, even laughter. Stella, who had once been a fortress of grief and anger, began to open up small spaces for Noah, allowing him to see her beyond the pain and resentment. Each day brought new discoveries, small gestures that brought them closer. They shared moments in the garden, laughed about old stories, and sometimes Stella would tell him about her childhood and the simple things she loved. Noah listened with genuine attention, captivated by the depth of her spirit. In some way, he felt reborn beside her, and the love he was beginning to feel was unlike anything he had known before. The 3-month period was drawing to a close, but Noah couldn't imagine his life without Stella by his side. He couldn't let her go, not after everything they had shared, not after everything he had learned. So he decided it was time to lay his feelings bare. That evening, Noah prepared a special dinner, unlike any he had made before. It wasn't the extravagant luxury he usually relied on to impress. It was simple and intimate, dishes he knew she loved. The atmosphere was warm, the soft glow of candlelight casting gentle shadows across the room. He watched Stella, taking in every detail of her, as if he wanted to preserve that moment forever. She seemed relaxed, her face softened by the flickering light. She told him about her recent visit to the flower shop, laughing as she recounted the antics of a clumsy customer. Noah smiled, but beneath the calm, a knot of nervousness tightened in his chest. He knew it was time to speak his truth, to open his heart, though he didn't know how she would respond. After dinner, he led her into the garden. They walked in silence, Noah's heart racing with every step. When they stopped beneath the starry sky, the cool night air wrapped around them, amplifying the intensity of the moment. "Stella," he began, his voice hesitant as he searched for the right words. "I know that at the start, this was just a bet. I thought I could control everything, that I could make you bend. But I was wrong, and I see that now." She listened intently, her gaze soft and patient, kindness in her eyes that he hadn't seen before. "These months with you have changed me," he continued, his voice thick with emotion. "You've shown me who I really am, what I lost, and now I can't imagine my life without you by my side." He paused, gathering himself before speaking again. "Stella, I know it's hard to believe me after everything, but I love you. I don't want this to end. I don't want you to leave when these 3 months are over. I want you to stay. I want us to try, really try, this time, without lies, without bets, just us, building something real." His voice wavered slightly, and he waited anxiously for her response, but Stella said nothing, her eyes locked on his. Noah's heart pounded in his chest, and the silence seemed to stretch on forever. Finally, she took a deep breath, lowering her gaze before speaking, her voice soft and unsure. "Noah," she said, her words heavy with emotion, I love you too." Her confession washed over him like a flood of relief and joy. In that moment, all the pain, all the guilt of the past seemed to melt away, replaced by something pure and undeniable. For a long while, they stood there in silence, their eyes and smiles speaking volumes that words never could. They had finally broken free to love without the weight of past mistakes or resentment. The next morning, Noah invited Stella for a walk in the park. They strolled together, talking, laughing, and taking in the simple beauty of the world around them. Noah was amazed at how much lighter everything felt with her by his side. Being with Stella gave him a new understanding of love, of life, a depth he had never known before. As the days passed, Noah made it his mission to surprise her, not with extravagant gifts, but with small, sincere gestures that reflected the change she had inspired in him. He showed interest in her work, accompanied her to the flower shop, and sometimes they spent hours discussing community projects, something Stella was passionate about. With each passing day, Stella found more reasons to be proud of the man Noah was becoming. She saw him not only trying to right his wrongs, but working to create a legacy that would inspire others. He was no longer living for himself. He was driven by a love for her and a desire to do good. One afternoon, as they walked through the park, Noah stopped suddenly and took her hand in his. "Stella," he said, his voice steady but full of meaning, "I want you to know that everything I do now is with the hope of becoming someone you can respect, someone you can be proud of. And that's all because you've shown me what truly matters." She smiled at him, her eyes sparkling with an emotion he had come to recognize, the same love, the same hope that filled his own heart. "I'm already proud of you, Noah. The man you're becoming, he's so much better than the one I first met. And despite everything that's happened, I wouldn't change a thing. Because in the end, it brought us here." They continued their walk, and Noah felt more fulfilled and at peace than he ever imagined possible. The scars of the past still lingered, but now they marked a journey of transformation, a journey that had drawn them closer in ways he could never have foreseen. With their love growing stronger each day, Noah and Stella began to plan a future together. Their dreams and goals were no longer separate, they were shared. What once seemed impossible for Noah, letting go of his pride and old ambitions, had become his greatest strength. Stella had inspired him to look beyond wealth and power, helping him appreciate the small joys and moments of simplicity. One of the projects that united Noah and Stella most was creating a foundation dedicated to supporting families and small businesses in need. Noah wanted to do more than just make up for the past. He wanted to change the world around him, building a legacy that truly made a difference. One sunny morning, they visited a community in one of the towns most affected by Noah's ruthless decisions in the past. The atmosphere was one of hard work and recovery, yet there was hope, with new businesses emerging and families regaining stability. Noah and Stella talked with the locals, listened to their stories of resilience, and promised support for initiatives that would help the community thrive. As they walked through the area, Noah paused to look at an old factory that had been shut down. He stood quietly for a moment, taking in the weight of the consequences of his past choices. "I never imagined how many lives I could affect," he said thoughtfully. "Back then, it was all about numbers. I didn't see people. I didn't see their stories, but you showed me that." Stella held his hand, offering comfort and encouragement. "And now you're changing those stories. You're giving people the chance you didn't give them before. That's what matters, Noah. What matters is what you do moving forward." His eyes lit up with renewed determination. Stella always saw beyond his flaws, helping him believe in his potential to change. She was his anchor, the strength that motivated him to keep going. On the way home, Noah surprised her by stopping in front of a small community school that had been partially destroyed and was about to close due to lack of funds. He looked at Stella, a spark in his eyes. "What if we helped this school?" he suggested, invested in it, offered resources and activities for the kids. "I want them to have the opportunities I never provided to other families in the past." Stella smiled, touched by Noah's genuine care for each detail, each life. "That would be amazing, Noah. You're becoming the man I always hoped to find, and I'm so happy to be by your side to see it happen." Together, they started planning the details of the project, gathering a team to renovate the school and bring in new teachers. They wanted the children to have a solid foundation, the ability to dream without limits, something Stella knew was essential to building a true future. As the months passed, Noah and Stella became an unstoppable team. He brought determination and resources, and she brought vision and care for each life touched by their projects. Gradually, Noah was no longer seen as the cold, calculating businessman, but as a man who genuinely cared about those around him. One evening, as they walked together in the garden under the starlit sky, Noah stopped and pulled her close. "Stella, everything I am today, everything we're building, I owe to you. You gave me a new purpose, a fresh start. And I just want you to know that none of this would be possible without you by my side." She smiled, moved, and gently held his face. "And you gave me the love I never thought I'd have, no. You've proved that forgiveness and transformation are real, and I couldn't be prouder of everything we've built together." They were silent for a moment, wrapped in the love and closeness they had cultivated. Under the stars, both knew this was just the beginning of a new journey. Noah and Stella's life became a cycle of love, work, and growth. Their actions inspired not just those around them, but also other businesses and families who saw in them an example that love and respect could overcome any barrier. A few days later, Noah and Stella organized a special event to celebrate the opening of the newly renovated and expanded school. Thanks to their efforts, the school was much more than just a building. It had become a symbol of hope and concrete proof of the impact kindness and humility could bring to the world. At the inauguration ceremony, Noah gave a heartfelt speech, sharing his own story and admitting his past mistakes. He spoke about redemption, about how Stella's love and forgiveness had transformed him. There was a shine in his eyes, and at the end of his speech, the applause filled the air. But what mattered most to him was Stella's proud look. After the ceremony, Noah and Stella walked through the halls of the school, now filled with the voices and laughter of children. Noah felt a deep peace, a sense of purpose he had never imagined possible. "This is our legacy," Stella said, moved, "not just for what we did together, but for what we inspired in others." Noah hugged her tightly, his heart full. "And I want to spend the rest of my life with you, building a better world." She held him close, her eyes filled with tears of happiness. "Me too. Noah and I both know that together we can face anything." That night, when they returned home, they felt a deep certainty that they were exactly where they were always meant to be, side by side, as partners, as friends, and most importantly, as souls who had found redemption in the love they shared. One morning, as Stella sipped her coffee, she suddenly felt a wave of nausea, an unexpected discomfort that lingered over the next few days. Trusting her growing intuition, she decided to take a test. When she saw the positive result, her heart began to race. She was pregnant, and during her first medical checkup, the surprise grew even greater. She was expecting twins. Let's play a little game for those who only read the comments. Type hamburger below. Only those who make it this far will understand. Now, back to the story. The news overwhelmed her with indescribable happiness, mixed with emotion as she reflected on everything she had been through. In that moment, a new beginning was unfolding. A new hope for the future. That same evening after dinner, Stella felt it was the right time to share the news with Noah. "Noah," she started, her voice quivering with emotion, "I have a surprise for you." He looked at her, his face full of curiosity and a smile, completely unaware of what was coming. "A surprise?" Noah asked, his eyes twinkling with anticipation. "You know I'm awful with surprises. Will you at least give me a hint?" Stella smiled and took his hand, gently squeezing it. "No hints this time," she replied, taking a deep breath and locking eyes with him. "Noah, I'm pregnant." For a moment, Noah was completely speechless, the shock mixing with an overwhelming joy he could hardly contain. His eyes widened, and a huge smile spread across his face. He pulled Stella into a tight embrace, laughing and crying simultaneously, struggling to put into words the happiness he felt. Are you serious?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "We're going to have a baby." Stella laughed, tears rolling down her cheeks as she caressed his face. "No, Noah, we're having two. I'm expecting twins." The words hit him with even greater force, and he hugged her again, as though trying to absorb the reality of the moment. love and happiness surged within him. All the struggles, the pain, and the internal battles they had endured seemed to culminate in this moment of renewal and redemption. Noah, feeling the weight and beauty of the moment, took a deep breath and gently pulled back, holding her hands tenderly. "Stella," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I need to tell you something. Now that we're going to have our family, I want to do this right. I want you to marry me. But this time, a real marriage, not because of a bet, not because of any game or conditions. I want it to be a marriage born of love, because I love you more than anything." Stella looked at him, moved and surprised. His words touched her deeply, leaving her speechless for a moment, her heart swelling with emotion. She smiled, tears streaming down her face, and nodded with an emotional yes. This wasn't just the promise of a new beginning, it was the promise of a future built on love, a love they had both fought so hard to find. The wedding was simple, just as they had always wanted, no extravagant displays, no superficial glamour. Only a few close friends and family gathered in a cozy, intimate corner of their own garden. The ceremony took place outdoors, bathed in the soft light of the late afternoon, with flowers carefully chosen by both Stella and Noah, symbolizing the deeper meaning they had found in simplicity and genuine love. When Stella stepped into the garden, wearing a modest white gown, Noah's heart skipped a beat. She was radiant, more beautiful than he had ever imagined, and in that moment, he knew this was the moment he had waited for all his life. There were no more games, no more outside pressures, just the two of them, bound by true love, ready to face whatever the future held. At the altar, hand in hand, they exchanged vows that were not just words but promises forged through the hardships they had overcome together. Noah gazed deeply into Stella's eyes, his voice steady but full of deep emotion. "Stella," he began, "you saved me. You saved my soul, my life, and showed me what real love is. From this day forward, I promise to be the husband and father you and our children deserve. I promise to build a life with you, one filled with love, respect, and kindness, because you're everything I never knew I needed, and everything I now have the honor to love." Stella held his hands tightly, tears glistening in her eyes as she replied, "Noah, you taught me that pain can make way for forgiveness, and that love is the strongest force in the world. I promise to stand by you through every joy and every challenge. Today, I marry you not just as your love, but as your life partner, and together, we'll build the family I've always dreamed of." When they exchanged rings, a sense of completeness washed over them. It was the end of their painful past and the beginning of a hopeful future. Their kiss was met with cheers and happy tears from friends and family, and as they embraced, Noah and Stella knew this was the start of something beautiful, a life now filled with meaning. In the months that followed, the excitement of expecting twins only brought them closer. Noah cared for Stella with unwavering devotion, and together they prepared the baby's room, selecting each item with love and attention to detail. With every passing day, Noah felt more whole, more complete, with the woman who had completely transformed his life. One afternoon, while they painted the baby's room together, Noah paused to watch Stella, who was working with joy and focus. As he moved closer, he hugged her from behind, resting his hands over her growing belly. "You know, Stella," he whispered, his voice soft but filled with gratitude, "I never thought I could be this happy. And now, with you and our children, I feel like I've finally found what I was always searching for." She smiled, placing her hands over his, their hearts connected in that simple, tender moment. "Me too, Noah. And I know that everything we've been through brought us here. Now we're a family, and I know that together we can face anything." Months later, when their twins were born, Noah and Stella experienced a happiness that surpassed any material success or professional achievement. Seeing their children for the first time filled them with a profound, indescribable love, a pure love that cemented the new purpose of their lives. Noah held the tiny, perfect babies in his arms, tears streaming down his face as he looked at Stella, now the mother of his children and his partner for life. They had found redemption, and with it, a new beginning. The pain and scars of the past had faded, now nothing more than distant memories, eclipsed by the bright, enduring light of their love. And so, with their babies in their arms, Noah and Stella knew they had found home, a home not just of bricks and mortar, but of love, resilience, and hope. Do you think Stella made the right choice in forgiving and marrying Noah? Leave your opinion in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? Subscribe to the channel to follow all our stories and click here on the end screen to watch more.